My name is Abby. I'm going to be interviewing my grandma today. Grandma, would you like to say anything about yourself?
I am 74 years old. My name is Mary Palma y Mesa, and we live in Arizona.
Okay. What year were you born? What day were you born? Do you remember anything about the day you were born, like from what your parents told you?
I was born on a Friday, April 11th, 1948.
Okay. What were your given first middle names that you have?
My first name is Mary, my middle name is Alice, and my maiden name was La Tulip.
All right. So the infancy stage is from birth to being 1 year old. Most infants, they learn how to walk, starting out with crawling. They learn to trust people in their inner circle and build relationships with those same people, such as either their primary caregiver, either being their parents, grandparents, maybe siblings. They learn to eat solid food, kind of leaning off of baby food. They learn how to communicate mostly with hand gestures, maybe some sounds here and there, or smiling or frowning. So in the video, my grandma talked about where she was born. That's been a really big part of her life because that's where all of her family was. Even though she doesn't really remember it, she still has pictures and stuff from that time. She really started all those years kind of in California, like she said. Yeah. At your toddler years, how did your family compare to other families in your neighborhood?
We were an average family of 7. I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters.
Do you have a vivid memory of something that you did as a child that you were disciplined for?
Yes, when I was 4 years old, I cut my sister's hair, my older sister's hair. I cut her bangs, and it was quite obvious because they were very ragged, and I stuffed the hair down the cold air vent. We were living in New York, and I did get in trouble for that.
So, the house that you lived in, how many bedrooms did it have? Do you remember your bedroom or if you shared it with anyone?
It had 6 bedrooms, and I don't remember. I was 5 years old when we moved from that home to California, so I really don't remember anything about my bedroom.
So the toddler years are from ages 1 to 3. Most toddlers, they begin to gain control of their bladder and bladder function. They might begin to become potty trained. They use more words, not full sentences yet, more than infants do. And they become less dependent on their primary caregiver. And that means that, they wander, they start going places where they wanted to go. They're very curious. And like my grandma said, she doesn't remember a whole lot about the setting that she grew up in when she was 1 to 3 years old, primarily because she did move, so she doesn't remember a lot of that home setting. But yeah, mostly the toddler age is just kind of growing more as a person and becoming less dependent on other people and starting to wander and do things that you want to do. I'm going to ask you about your preschool. What responsibilities did you have at home when you were young?
I really don't remember. Before I was 5 years old, I really don't remember any chores that I had to do. My mother worked, and I was the baby of the family. So my father had a barber shop hooked onto the front of our house. He babysat me, and basically all day long I had to sit in the barber shop so he could see what I was doing or wasn't doing and sit there and just hang out with my dad.
So knowing how your life was then, what's different about children growing up today from when you were growing up?
Oh my goodness. I don't think preschool existed back then, and I don't think parents had an option to put their child in any kind of a little learning program. It was either a relative took care of you or the mom stayed home and was the stay-home mom.
Do you remember any big world events from when you were growing up and from that kind of age period? Anything that happened that made like world news or something like that?
At a very young age like that, no, I don't remember anything. I think my first really vivid memory of something that was world shattering was I was in the 10th grade when President Kennedy was shot and killed.
So, stage 3 is your preschool age, kind of from 3 to 6 years old. Um, Children at that age, they learn to provide self-care, whether that be speaking up for themselves or telling a caregiver that something's wrong. They learn how to play, whether it be with themselves or like learning skills that they're learning to play with or other children their age. They kind of know good from bad, but it depends on the kid if they're mischievous or not and don't really follow their moral compass. And they learn the difference between boys and girls. So, for example, if a 3-year-old little girl is walking in the store with her caregiver and she saw a little boy, she would know that that is a boy. Or vice versa, if it was a little boy in a store, saw a girl, the boy would know that it is a girl. And that kind of happens around that age where they can distinguish between the two genders. I'm going to ask you some questions about your school age. What dreams and goals did you have for your life when you were in school to when you graduated?
That's a tricky question. Probably in that particular era, it was pretty much known that you were supposed to get married and have children and be a homemaker.
Were there any phrases that were popular when you were in school?
Any phrases? Not anything out of the ordinary that was just, I can't remember. There was a lot of name calling, with your friends or not your friends, but no, I don't remember any set phrases.
When you were growing up, what activities did you like to do for fun? And did you have a favorite spot to hang out or do those activities with your friends?
As a young girl, my sister and I loved to roller skate all around the neighborhood. And we had the old-fashioned roller skates that had a key that you put in on the side and tightened it to your shoe. And then I didn't have a bicycle, so I never went bike riding. But as into my teen years, we liked to go bowling or to the drive-in theaters.
So stage 4 is when the child is beginning to go to school, also known as the school age, and it can happen from 6 to 9 years old, maybe even 10. This is where they develop social skills because they are in school. They have to learn how to communicate and play with other children their age. They learn to get along with others. They begin to have friends. They learn how to be nice to each other. They learn how to share. They develop morals. So if they know they're doing something wrong, they get that feeling. Or if they know they should do something and they're not, they get that feeling. And they also learn basic reading and writing skills. Not as advanced as someone in their teens or early adulthood or anything like that, but this is where they kind of learn to get basic skills needed to function in society. I'll ask you some questions about your late childhood. Do you remember your first job and whether you liked it or not?
My first job was babysitting the 3 little girls that lived next door to us for the summer. And I did not care for that job too much. The girls were brats, to put it bluntly. They were little stinkers.
Do you know the meaning of your family name, and are there stories and origins of your family name?
There was a story about my maiden name that there was a shady person that moved from England over into Canada. Both of my parents were Canadians, and he changed his name to La Tulip what the original name was, I don't know. I just know he changed his name, and that's what happened.
Okay, so I want to grab this picture. So this was my grandma when she was 16, kind of in her late childhood years. And then if you wanted to show these two and explain what they both are.
This was my sippy cup when I was a child, a little child, and it's very hard plastic, not at all like the sippy cups of today. And these were my booties that I wore. I don't remember wearing them, but they were my booties. They're little leather booties, and they've survived.
So stage 5 is the late childhood years of a child, whether they're 9 to 10 years old, sometimes 12. This is where the child becomes more independent from their primary caregiver, and they might rebel a little bit because they're getting into their teenage years, kind of want to test the limits of their primary caregivers. They also develop better balance and muscle and coordination. Just because they're getting older, they're becoming stronger, they're doing more than, say, a 3-year-old would or an infant would. They have more physical activity that they can do. Around this time is when girls can go through puberty. Boys is usually 13 to 15, but girls can get, their period. They can start menstruating. They become to have the ability where they can get pregnant around this age. They learn how to study because they're in school, they're learning new things, and they're growing in their school. So they need to learn how to have study habits, and they're learning. Okay, now I'm going to ask you some questions about your adolescent years. Is the present, as of now, better or worse than when you were younger?
Oh, I think I lived in an extremely wonderful time, and I think today's world is quite a bit different, and yesteryear was better.
So how did each age were different from the one before it? Do you remember any specific differences from, say, when you were 10 all the way up till you were 18, if anything was different that stood out to you? Like responsibilities, friends, just growing up?
Well, the older I got, the more I was required to help at home. I started cooking for my family when I was 14. I started sewing, making my own clothes when I was 12.
So stage 6 is the teenage years, adolescence. It can happen from 12 years old to 18 years old. So this is when, like I said, puberty happened kind of in this time frame. So those children have to learn to accept changes in their body, whether boys be growing facial hair, girls, they have to deal with having a period, they have to deal with getting breasts, their hips getting wider, maybe gaining a little bit of weight. They also have to, more into their teenage years and adolescence, they have to prepare for life, outside of school, college, career choices, the end of high school, what they're going to do after if college isn't for them. And they begin to be attracted to others, whether it be same sex or different sex from them. They learn to begin to have crushes, maybe a little bit relationships, and they develop values for the real world. So they understand what money is, they understand what having a job is like, they understand why college is important, and maybe they understand why their parents made some choices for them that they did when they were younger, and they just learn how it feels to be an adult and kind of in the real world. I'll ask you some questions about your young adulthood. Did you think about the future and make plans?
Yes, I thought about becoming a housewife and a mother and having my own house and being a housewife.
So how did you meet Grandpa? Did you know when you saw him that he was the one, or were you a little bit iffy about him at first?
I met him, he was going to college in San Luis Obispo, Cal Poly, and I was working in the food service area of the apartment complex he lived in, and he would come in twice a day. My shift was twice a day, breakfast and lunch, and I was behind the counter assisting the college students getting their meals and that sort of thing. And when I first met him, I kind of thought he was a geek.
So knowing that you actually married him, what was your wedding like?
It was very, very small. We got married by the Justice of the Peace at 7 o'clock at night on the little grassy patch in front of the tiny little apartment that I was living in San Luis Obispo.
Hey, if you wanted to show this picture.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's them getting married and cutting their wedding cake. And then if you wanted to show the wedding ring.
This is my original wedding band, and we were married on September 1st, 1972. We just celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary.
So speaking of weddings, if you wanted to grab that one, and then explain a little bit about the picture.
That is my mother and father's wedding day. They were married in 1935, June the 25th. They were married in the morning, and that afternoon the entire wedding party went to the Buffalo Zoo for the afternoon, and that was their wedding day.
So stage 7 is young adulthood. It's anywhere from 18 to 40 years old. So during this time, these children and these people, they choose their education path that they want to go on, whether it be going to college, community college, going to a trade school, going to classes, getting training. And with that comes their career selection. So they might have to do more education in school than another person their age would have to. This is kind of when they select their partner. If they want to get married, they find that one person that they really connect to and love, or others might not find that person. It kind of just depends on them. Sometimes if they choose to, they can become a parent and they develop, a sex life. It's a normal thing in their lives. They're growing up, they're becoming older, and they're becoming a parent to another child that they're going to have to go through all these stages with. So they're really just getting a feel of really being adult, really having those responsibilities, making an effort, to go to school, do good in your job, and just be a good either spouse or a parent. But if you don't choose to be a parent or be a spouse or have a relationship, then this is a time where they really focus on themselves. I'm going to ask you some questions about your middle adulthood. Do you feel differently about yourself now from how you felt when you were younger? And if you do so, how?
How would I feel different? Well, I'm older, and I assume I'm a little wiser than I was back then. And I guess I don't really know what else to tell you. It's just you grow up, you get older, and you just you have more patience, I think, and you just deal with things as they come.
So knowing that you're obviously a parent, because you're my grandma, what is the best thing about being a parent and a grandparent?
Oh dear. Let's see. The best thing about being a parent is you nurture your children, they grow up, and then they have children, and you have awesome grandchildren.
What is something funny or embarrassing one of your children said at an age that you'll never forget?
My children or my grandchildren?
Children.
My children.
You can do both if you want to.
When your mother was very young, we had an Avon lady, and the woman had an acne problem, and your mother asked her, "Have you had the chicken pox? Because you have all those sores on your face." It's like, that was embarrassing. Very embarrassing.
What about your grandchildren?
My grandchildren. Oh, gosh. I don't think my grandchildren have ever embarrassed me. They've been humorous over the years, saying different things, but I don't think they've ever embarrassed me. Probably they've embarrassed their parents, but that's one of those cases where you tell yourself, boy, I'm glad I'm not the parent.
So stage 8 is middle adulthood, and that's anywhere from 40 to 65 years old. This is when their life, they know they've already had their education, they've already had their schooling, they've already become a parent if they wanted to, and they've really already got their life set out the way that they hopefully wanted to. So during this time, they have to adjust to physical changes. You know, our body gets older, we might have to deal with sickness. It also could be hard to adjust with, adult children, because most people don't have children at 40 to 65. So it's going to be, hard seeing that their children are growing up and picking a career and picking college and all those types of things. They mostly develop hobbies. They adjust to aging parents. That's always hard because if they're 40 to 65, their parents are obviously a little bit older. So it could be hard to adjust that. Their parents are getting older, they're getting older, their children are getting older. So, yeah. I'm going to ask you some questions about your life now and late adulthood. So, how do you feel now about growing up? What's the hardest thing about getting older?
Arthritis, the aches and the pains. That's the hardest thing about growing older, is the aches and the pains.
Oh, so what's your typical day like now?
Right now, we're in the process of moving right now. And so my typical day is get up and pack some things and patch some holes in the wall where I took pictures off the wall and get ready to move to our new location.
What was your typical day like before you started moving?
Fix Grandpa his breakfast, probably read the newspaper, and then maybe do some sewing. I love to make puzzles, so 1,000 piece or more. I enjoy making puzzles. So I would spend a little time, not every day, but some of the day, making puzzles, and housekeeping and a little gardening and maybe a trip to the grocery store. And we love to cruise, so we try and throw in a cruise a couple times during the year, and that's basically how we vacation.
So, do you think that you lived a life that you dreamed of, one you're most proud of, or would you have done things a little bit differently?
No, I can't say that I would do things differently. You learn as you go, and you do the best you can at the time with the knowledge that you have. And hey, not everybody gets it right the first time around, but I think we did okay.
Mm-hmm. So, last question. What's one thing you would tell your younger self, knowing all the things you know now and all the experience that you've had?
What would I tell myself? Probably save more money. Because you never know what hits you when you get older, and there are some things that you don't expect, and you think, wow, I should have been a little better at saving money.
All right, well, those are all my stage 9 questions. Did you have fun?
Oh, this was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Sweet.
And I have one more thing to tell you. Is the most irritating thing that a grandchild has ever done to me is sweet little Abigail, when she was 5, maybe 4, probably 5. She locked me out of the house on the patio because she got mad that her brother beat her on his scooter going across the patio. And so she locked the door, and her brother and I were locked outside, and she refused to open that door. Eventually, she did open it and got punished with 5 minutes in the bedroom for being a brat. And so, anyway, but she redeemed herself. Later on that night, she said she was sorry.
So So stage 9 is late adulthood, and this is anywhere from 65 plus. So during this part, it's probably the hardest part of life. They adjust to their decreasing health. Obviously, people don't live forever. So they get weaker, their bones get fragile, they bruise easier, and they're more at risk for health problems and hospital visits. They retire. Some people retire early, but they have a lot of leisure activity. They have a lot of time to themselves to do what they want. They cope with a lot of death. Getting older, spouses pass away. Sadly, children might as well. Their friends, people that they've had in their inner circle for a very long time, could pass away before them, and that's a very hard thing to deal with. Even if you're 65 or you're 10 years old or anywhere in between, it's always a hard thing. With retirement and with leisure activities, they also develop new friends. They can meet new people wherever they go. If they go and play bingo, or if they go play golf, they get a new inner circle of friends that are in their age. And sadly, they have to prepare themselves for death. Like I said earlier, everyone dies at one point. You don't live forever, so they kind of have to get their wills in order, figure out what they want to do after they pass away, such as cremation or burial, or if they want a funeral or celebration of life. It's very hard, and with going into late adulthood, you lose a lot of your ability and function to do things that you normally would as like a 30-year-old or a 45-year-old. So they have to go into either assisted living homes, nursing centers, maybe they have to have home care. So it's definitely a hard thing to adjust to, especially if, say, your partner has passed away or you don't have a support system. It could be a very hard thing to do. So my favorite part of interviewing my grandma was actually after the interview. She hadn't seen those pictures of her wedding day, or she hasn't really talked about, her sippy cup or her baby shoes in a very long time. So it brought back some of those really good memories. She got quite emotional talking about it afterwards. So I thought it was very sweet to see how someone doesn't quite remember their infancy or toddler years, but remembers like the special things about their life and their happy moments. And it's so cool to see how someone has grown over 74 years as old as she is, and how many memories and how many milestones she made during her 74 years. So definitely made me realize a lot. I learned some things about my grandma, some funny things, and so I really thought it was interesting how much I learned, and that was my favorite part, seeing her, kind of go back in time and reliving some of those happy moments.